All right, so far what we've done in section 3.1, we learned how to solve by graphing, okay, which a lot of you guys did well, but unfortunately you never wrote answers on your quiz. You might notice that, like I put like, what's the answer, right? Like you drew everything perfectly, but I'm like, what's the solution? You got to tell me what the answer is, right? But 3.1 is just basically solving by graphing. I gave you two equations, you would graph them, you figured out where they crossed or maybe where they didn't cross, and you gave me answers. And I told you guys that that's probably the least accurate, actually not probably, it is the least accurate way to solve a system of equations because your lines can be crooked, so your intersections may not happen where they're supposed to happen. Then we moved on to section 3.2, which was substitution. That's where you were supposed to get the two equations, separate them, pick one of the two equations, the one you thought looked easiest. From those, you pick either the x or the y to solve for. Once you solved for it, you plugged it into the other equation, solved for a specific variable, plugged it back in, and you solved for the second variable, and then you had your point, your x and your y value. That was substitution. That was the last question on your quiz, okay? So that's an accurate way to find a solution. My favorite way, but it doesn't have to be the only way. I also like elimination. I just prefer substitution. But today we're going to talk about elimination, and we're doing the easy elimination today. Okay, the easy elimination. You'll see why we call it the easy one in a bit. But in elimination, our job is to eliminate a variable, make it go away so that we can solve for the remaining variable. Once we find the remaining variable, whatever we solve for, then we'll plug it back into the equation, any one of the two, and we'll find the value of the variable we eliminated, okay? So let me show you what that looks like. So in terms of steps, how to eliminate. And by the way, you guys don't have to memorize these steps like by reciting them over and over. The easiest way to memorize steps is to practice the problems. So if you do all four of these problems, it doesn't hurt to do them again the next day, just to practice, right? To see if you still remember how to do them. Because if you do, that means you have the steps memorized. If you don't, then you practice them so that you can remember that, right? And you keep doing it until eventually it's just kind of stuck in your head, right? So how to eliminate. So the very first step, now I'm going to show you the first step is what I call a lazy step. But I mean, you can be a little bit smarter about it and look at the values and decide whether you should add or subtract by thinking about it first. But I always tell people, look, if you don't want to think about it, is that me? If you don't want to think about it, then what you're going to do is you're going to just add, okay? So I'm going to put add both equations. Okay, so we're going to add both equations. Now I'm going to put right here, or subtract if elimination does not occur. So if elimination fails. So you're going to add both equations vertically, kind of like adding numbers. You're going to add them up, and hopefully what happens is that you eliminate one of the variables. Okay? If it doesn't happen, then you're going to subtract them instead. So you try adding first, hopefully variable disappears. If not, then you subtract. One of the variables should disappear. Today, one of them should disappear by addition or subtraction. Like I said, today we're doing the easier version of it, so it's going to eliminate something by adding or subtracting. Okay, so that's the very first thing. Step 2, solve for the remaining variable. So like I told you guys, when you do addition or subtraction, one of the variables is going to disappear. Let's say the x goes away. Well, there's only a y left over. So solve for it. Okay, whatever variable is left over, solve for it. You're going to get let's say you get like y equals 3, right? Well, what you're going to do with that y equals 3 is you're going to plug it back into any one of the two equations. So step 3, Plug in the solved variable into one of the original equations. Okay. So you're going to plug in the solved variable into one of the original equations. Which one? You get to pick. I always pick the easiest looking one. Okay, I try not to make things more complicated than they already are. So you're going to plug it into one of the original equations. Then I'm going to put solve. So if you plugged it in, then there's going to be a way for you to solve for whatever variable is left over. Okay, then solve. And then step 4, write your answer as a point. Okay, an x comma y. All right, so negative 2 comma 4, something like that. All right, so you'll write your answer as a point. So this is how you eliminate. Again, do you have to memorize all this stuff? No, just remember, okay, elimination, I always add or maybe subtract. Something's going to cancel out. I'll solve for what's missing, or sorry, I'll solve for what remains. And then once I solve for whatever remains, I'll plug that back into one of the original equations and solve for the next variable. Then I'm done. I just got to put my answer as points. Okay, I basically just said all 4 steps just in my own way, right? Because that's the way I think about it. That's the way it has to go. So let me give you guys some examples so you can see this. Now, like I told you guys, these examples are considered, or today's assignment is considered the easy way to eliminate. Okay. Tomorrow's, it's not that they're really difficult. There's just more work to them. So some people think when it takes more steps, it must be more difficult. Not really. But it will be probably the most complicated of everything that we've done. Okay, so solve by elimination. So here's this one right here is a 2x plus 10y equals 4. Negative 2x plus 7y equals 30. Now notice how I didn't write these side by side? Because for elimination, you want them vertically aligned. Okay? So something you guys should also notice, look at the x's and look at the y's. You see how the x's, they almost have the same number as a 2 and a negative 2? And the y's have a 10 and a 7? So the y's don't really line up in terms of numbers. I know the x's have a positive and a negative 2, but they have a 2. They both have a matching 2. Just that one is negative. That's not a big deal. A matching number is key to the easy way to eliminate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just add. Okay? I'm just going to try adding. By the way, I always put like the plus or the minus on the outside with the circle, just so that I don't get it mixed up with anything. So I'm just going to add, and hopefully something goes away. So what's 2x plus a negative 2x? What do I get? 0. So notice I just eliminated the x. What's 10y plus 7y? All right. And then 4 plus 30? Well, that's 34. So very first step says to add or subtract so that you can eliminate. I eliminated the x. Okay, so that's good. Second step, solve for the remaining variable. So I'm just going to divide by 17, right? So y is equal to 2. All right. A lot easier so far, I think, than substitution, right? So now that I got my answer, it says get this answer and plug it into any one of the 2 original equations. Which equation do you want me to plug it into? The top one or the bottom one? Top? Okay, I'd pick the same thing because I'd rather not deal with the negative in the front. So let's go to the 2x plus 10 times y, that's 2. You know what? Let me change the color on that. Equals to 4. That way you guys see that I plugged it into an equation, okay? So we picked the top equation. I'm putting in the value of 2 where the 10y is, so it's 10 times 2. So that gives me 2x plus 20 equals 4. I'll subtract 20 over to the right side. I get 2x equals to negative 16. And if I divide both sides by 2, what's x equal to? Negative 8. The last step, write your answer as a point. Negative 8, comma 2. What do you guys think? Better than substitution? I like it. Not bad. Okay? I don't mind this type of elimination. The one I do mind sometimes is the one where you got to get a little more complicated. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Okay? But that's not too bad. Okay? So you're going to get the equations. You add them. Again, if you don't want to think about it, just add. If you want to think about it and say, well, how would I eliminate these two numbers? Then it takes a little bit of time. Maybe you subtract first. It doesn't matter. But add or subtract. Do one or the other. If the variables do not disappear, if one of them does not disappear, that means you got to do the other. Okay, if you added and it didn't disappear, then try subtracting. Okay? So, and then once you find one of the variables, like we did right there, y equals 2, plug it into any one of the original two equations, solve for the missing variable, and we're done. Okay? So here's example number 2. Solve by elimination. All right, let me see. Let me try this one right here. Negative x minus 8y equals to 13. And then negative 2x plus 8y is equal to negative 22. Now do me a favor. Do not write what I'm about to start writing. Okay? Bless you. Because you're going to find out you're going to have to erase everything I do. Alright? So, you're going to notice the x variable has a negative 1 and the other one has a negative 2, right? So the numbers don't match up. The y variables have a negative 8 and a positive 8. Actually, no, you can write what I'm about to do. So, I was hoping I would get one that would fail. I'll do this next one right now. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add. Okay, like I said, don't worry about it. Don't think about it. Just add. Let's see what happens. Okay. So, negative x plus a negative 2x, that's a negative 3x. Okay. Negative 8 plus 8, well, that's 0. So the y is gone. And then 13 plus a negative 22. That's a negative 9. Okay? So notice this time the y variable disappeared. The first time the x variable disappeared. Right here the y variable disappeared. So alright, no big deal. I'm going to keep solving. So if I divide both sides by negative 3, I get x equals to 3. Okay? So now that I have that answer, I get to plug that number into any one of the two equations up top. Which ones do you guys want, top or bottom? I mean, they're both bad, but yeah, we'll go top. It looks like it has less stuff in it, right? So I don't like either one, but whatever. So negative, I'm plugging in a 3. So 3 into the top equation minus 8y is equal to 13. So that's negative 3 minus 8y equals to 13. I'm going to add that negative 3 to the other side. So negative 8y is equal to 16. I'll divide both sides by negative 8. Then I get y is equal to negative 2. So my answer is 3, negative 2. This is where, if I were to graph these lines, this is where they would cross. Okay, so I'm just checking something here. All right, here's the last one I'm going to give you guys. So are we okay so far with example 1 and 2? I mean, I do like elimination as well. When it's like this, I like elimination because it's not too complicated. right? But then sometimes what happens is that none of the numbers match up. The x's don't have matching numbers, the y's don't have matching numbers. So then what you have to do is multiply it throughout. And that makes it a little more complicated. So sometimes people are like, yeah, I don't like it when that happens. So I understand. That's why I always like substitution, because I don't have to think about, is it going to work or is it not going to work? It's one of those things where you can just do it and it's always going to work because you're substituting. It doesn't matter. Okay? So let me give you a problem like this. We're going to solve by elimination. And here's a negative 4x plus 4y equals to, let's say, 12. And I'll put, actually, let's change that 4y to a 2y right here. So negative 4x plus 2y equals to a 12. Okay? And then I'll put 4x minus 2y equals to a 10. All right. So again, without thinking, I'm just going to add. Let's see what happens. So negative 4x plus 4x, that's 0. So good, I eliminated something. And then 2y plus negative 2y. All right, so I eliminated everything. 12 plus 10, 22. I didn't do anything wrong, just that my variables all disappeared. Well, what did we do in this case when we were doing substitution? If I get a false statement, it means no solution. If it's a true statement, it means infinitely many, right? True statement, infinitely many. So if this would have come out to 0 equals 0 or 12 equals 12, I would say infinitely many. But here, this is false. And if it's false, we have no solution. So that stuff can still happen, okay? So just because it looks like these problems are a little bit easier to do, it doesn't mean that those options disappear. We can still have infinitely many, or no solution, or just one specific solution that you solve. Okay? So you're either going to add or subtract, okay? And then from there, you'll be able to solve for one of these. So let me show you what a subtraction problem would look like. We're not going to solve the whole thing, but I just want to show you guys a setup for something like this. So just real quick, solve by elimination. Maybe we'll solve it. I don't know. We'll see. So let's say we have a 3x. I'm making a problem up, so I hope the answer comes out okay, but we'll see. Actually, no, I don't have to make it up. I can use this one. I wrote one out a little earlier today. This one should work. So here's one where I'm going to tell you, don't write what I'm about to write down, because it's not going to work the first time. So I don't want you to try it. And then I say, oh, look, it doesn't work. And then you're like, oh, now I got to erase everything, right? So don't write anything down yet. Okay? But I mean, you can write down the problem, but check out what's going to happen. Just watch. If I don't think about it, the first thing I'm going to do is just add. Okay? I'm just going to add because that's what it says. Just add, right? 6x plus 6x, that's 12x. And 9y plus a negative 2y, that's a positive 7y. Did I eliminate a variable? No. That's how I know that addition doesn't work. Okay? So then what I'm going to do, and now you can start writing this down, is I'm going to subtract. Now subtraction sometimes gets a little tricky. Right now you're going to see what I mean by this. 6x minus 6x, 0, right? So I just eliminated the x. My next one is 9y minus negative 2y. What is that? It's positive 11y, not 7. Okay? Because it's 9y minus a negative 2y. Minus a negative means plus, right? So 9 plus 2, that's 11. And then 3 minus a negative 8, that's also 11. So that means that y would equal to 1. I'm just going to go ahead and do this problem. Okay, if y is equal to 1, I'm just going to plug it into any one of the two. Which one do you guys want, top or bottom? Bottom, I heard first. So here we go. 6x. And it doesn't matter, guys. It doesn't matter which one you plug it into. It's your own preference. Whatever you feel more comfortable with, use that one. I would have also picked the bottom. It doesn't have a 9 in it. So, 8 smaller than 9. So I'll rather deal with the smaller numbers. So I have 6x minus 2 equals to negative 8. I'll add 2 over. I got 6x equal to negative 6. So if I divide both sides by 6, I get that x is negative 1. And here's my answer, negative 1, 1. I wasn't going to do the problem, but it's okay. So that's what your homework's going to be like.